Welcome to Madison College's School of Professional and Continuing Education. I am Leanne Cordisco, and I'm here to introduce a fantastic webinar for you today. Our lakes in winter, what you can do to prevent oversalting. We have 4 experts in this field who are going to be sharing information with us, and we are happy to present this really timely subject matter to you now that the lakes are frozen over and certainly needing our help. We're going to begin with Mike Piper, who is the Deputy Agency Director of the RPC. And Mike, I'm going to share some slides and I'm going to turn it over to you. So Mike, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Leanne, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining us for this session on what you can do to prevent oversalting. Thanks to Madison College for hosting this event. As Leanne said, I'm Mike Piper. I'm the Deputy Agency Director and Director of Environmental Resources Planning for the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission. We're one of 9 regional planning commissions in the state, and our mission is to strengthen the region by engaging communities through planning, collaboration, and assistance. We're going to kick things off today by talking about why we should all be concerned about oversalting and our current planning initiative to reduce salt use in the Starkweather Creek watershed. Next slide, please. Chloride can enter our freshwater resources in several ways. The most common is de-icer, also known as road salt. All of the de-icer that is applied to our roads, parking lots, driveways, sidewalks, and bike paths will eventually make its way into our surface water or groundwater. Another major source of chloride is water softeners. Salt used in softening our water is not removed by municipal wastewater treatment plants or septic systems. So this chloride also ends up contaminating our surface water and groundwater. Also, potassium chloride is widely used in fertilizer, which can also contribute chlorides to our freshwater systems. Next, please. Groundwater supplies the drinking water of all of the communities in our region. This data from Madison and Dane County Public Health shows a long-term upward trend in both the number of water supply wells impacted by chlorides, as well as the amount of chloride contamination in each well. More data from the Madison and Dane County Public Health Department shows the same long-term trend of increasing chloride levels in all of our lakes. Why do we care about chlorides? One big reason is that excessive levels of chlorides are toxic to fish and other aquatic life. Chloride has been found to result in chronic toxicity, which is the negative health effects from long-term exposure, such as stunted growth or reproductive problems at levels of 395 milligrams per liter. The acute toxicity level for chloride is 757 milligrams per liter. Starkweather Creek is one of 4 water bodies in Dane County where the chloride concentrations have been found at levels that are toxic to aquatic life. The others are Pheasant Branch in Middleton, the Yahara River north of Lake Mendota, and Odana Pond. There are currently over 40 water bodies throughout Wisconsin that are listed as impaired for chloride pollution. Fortunately, there are many groups working together to try to address this problem. One example is a planning project that my agency, RPC, is currently working on. We brought together a steering committee of organizations committed to reducing chlorides in the Starkweather Creek watershed. This group includes the Friends of Starkweather Creek, City of Madison Engineering, Public Health of Madison and Dane County, the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District, American Family, Bruce Company, Madison College, Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and Wisconsin Saltwise. As part of that project, we have about 20 volunteers monitoring chloride levels in Starkweather Creek to help identify problem areas and measure progress in chloride reduction efforts. Most importantly, the steering committee members are working together to engage watershed residents and business owners and show what we can all do to reduce our salt use and be more salt-wise. Up next, we have some great co-speakers from American Family, City of Madison Engineering, and Wisconsin Saltwise who will tell you what they have been doing to help prevent oversalting and what you can do too.
Okay, next I would like to introduce Wayne Rayfield. He is with American Family Insurance, and he is a land management administrator. And I believe that's a Segura cactus behind you.
Leanne, thank you. Yeah, that saguaro cacti was from Phoenix, one of our operating facilities that we manage. Obviously, they don't have too many problems with winter salting down there, but so what you're looking at now is, well, let me give you a little background. I'm our facilities land management administrator, and we're involved with strategic planning for all of our operations locations in across the nation, which we have about 8 of them, from Phoenix to Denver to Missouri to Minnesota and in Wisconsin facilities. And we're involved with the land management of invasive species, native communities, how people use the sites, how they access them, and also the Saltwise became very important to us. Maybe about 3 years ago, I guess 4 years ago, we certified and started doing our research on what Saltwise was, and the fact that we were involved with winter maintenance activities. And we knew that through all the snow belt that we were applying salt, and we knew that it was bad for the environment if we applied too much. And we just didn't understand the full capacity of that until we got involved with Saltwise, and realizing that in Madison itself, you see a slide here, we have 6 locations that we started tracking that salt and started to learn more about what we were doing, and found that we were putting out quite a bit of material. And then in between, about 2 years ago, I think it'll be in April, we reached out to the city of Madison and Phil Gabler to help get educated in Saltwise with our teams. So it wasn't just myself, it was our facilities staff and 2 of our contractors, because we have 2 different contractors that. So with our facilities, we had hands-on training with all our contractors and site people to learn how to manage this. And with the next slide, you'll see that between the seasons of 2018 and 19 and 2019 and 20, in between there is where we got trained. And we see quite a reduction in the pounds of salt from 1,200, over 1 million pounds of salt down to 700. And yet we only had 4 inches difference in snowfall that year. So we saw a pretty radical change in how we were approaching winter salting and what that does to the environment. And actually, we calculated the savings to American Family being pretty substantial, just in salt savings from that year to the other, of over almost $70,000. And then if you take into consideration, which Saltwise taught us, that what a ton of salt does to your infrastructure is anywhere from $800 to $3,300. We came up with a savings of almost $500,000 that we were protecting our infrastructure. So just a kind of a short little snippet of what we found after being trained and being aware of what was happening, what the potential was to the environment, and then basically our bottom line. And the plan is moving forward with this is now taking this program, once we've kind of done a couple pilot seasons here, is to spread this out to Minnesota, to Missouri, and actually even Denver. Snowfalls are much less down there, but we're still applying salt there. But to take those practices and getting the recording started, and then applying the practices of Saltwise to really see the reduction in the cost savings and the environmental savings. So thank you, City of Madison and Saltwise. It's really been a nice collaborative effort to learn and then to see what the results have been for us at American Family.
Wayne, that information is very eye-opening, and thank you for sharing that with us. Next is Phil Gabler, who is a water resource engineer here in the city of Madison. So Phil, take it away.
Hi, everyone. So when I started the city in 2015, there was a salt training program that was put on by Fortin Consulting, you'll see on the slide. And it was, all kind of housed in Minnesota and didn't have a whole lot of momentum behind it. But it was something we did as part of we know salt's important and we should work at reducing the over-application of salt. Next slide, please. And within this training, right, we have this goal of reducing salt in groundwater and surface water by training the winter maintenance professionals to use the least amount of de-icing material necessary to keep pavements safe. You can see here, and Mike talked a little bit about this, that it doesn't take a lot of salt to get to that impactful level in our surface waters. In fact, it only takes 1 teaspoon to make 5 gallons of water be, at that chronic toxicity level where you'll have reduced growth in your fish and even sterilized fish eggs. We can see a similar slide to what Mike showed where we have this increasing chloride level in the lakes. And also that same slide where we're seeing increased levels of chloride in our wells. So that last slide we showed with the increased level of chloride in the wells is what really inspired Mayor Soglin to change the way we were doing from this kind of passive information out in the community to a more structured certification program. In 2018, he saw the increase in levels of chloride in the wells and said, we are going to have a program that's similar to the voluntary certification program for daycare facilities in Madison, which had been a success in the 70s. And it really helped to raise the level of service of all of the daycare facilities in the entire region. So with that, we have 2 types of certification, individual and organizational. And with that, you go to a training course, which was developed with our stakeholders, both public and private, and with our consultant, Fortin Consulting. And at the end of this, you take an open book exam, and most people pass if they're paying attention and engaged with, which most of the participants are, and you get a certificate at the end that is tied to the individual, and you can use this either as a way to prove to a business that you know what you're doing in winter maintenance, or as evidence that you have taken this course to your clients. Now, to date, we have over 100 private applicators that have become certified and are out implementing these best practices. And then we also have a huge list of public employees that work for the city of Madison and are doing winter maintenance that have gone through the training as well, and in other municipalities and agencies throughout Dane County. So just a brief overview of what's in this training, right? We teach people, how do you calibrate your equipment so you know that what you put down is what you think you're putting down? How do you measure the temperature so you know what the right application rate is? How you can use some of the charts that have been developed to pick that application rate based on the material you're going to use. Different materials require different application rates, and how you pre-treat or work with that material before you put it on the ground impacts how much you do need to put down. The importance of post-storm debriefings. How do you learn from the last storm so that you're prepared to better attack the future storm? How do we share and promote innovation? Right? We have a lot of tinkerers that are working in the winter maintenance field, and there's lots of really inexpensive or free changes you can make to existing equipment if you look at your equipment from a salt reduction lens. A lot of times in this industry is really developed to get as much salt as possible down on the road. And if you look at it as salt being a precious resource, you can make some small modifications and really reduce your salt use and have safer roads. And that's kind of the training in a 3-minute nutshell. So now I'll pass this over to Allison.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil. I'm next going to introduce Allison Madison, and she is with Wisconsin Saltwise, and she's going to tell us how we can get involved. Allison,
Thank you, Leanne.
please take it away.
All right, so I started with Wisconsin Saltwise last June of 2020, And as Phil described, Saltwise, for the partnership formed in Dane County, it was a partnership of the city of Madison, the county itself, other local municipalities, the Madison Water Utility, the Sewerage District, a number of public partners that were concerned about and are concerned about the increasing concentrations of chloride that are showing up, as Mike and Phil showed you, both in our surface waters and in our drinking water. So when I started this past June, I was really tasked with the need to figure out how we can move Saltwise forward, how we can increase public outreach after focusing for several years on those trainings with the winter maintenance professionals. We want to make sure the word is getting out to the general public about the importance of reducing salt use. And also, how do we take this program that's working really well at the local level and spread it out so that people across the state can be seeing these same really significant reductions in salt use. So one of the things that I started doing, you can see in the bottom right corner there, was working on Wisconsin Salt Awareness Week. So I worked with a number of partners from across the state that are parts of watershed organizations or other municipalities that are trying to do outreach around salt. And we put together an awareness week with a number of different speakers that talked about the impacts of salt on our drinking water, on our surface waters, what you can do around the home in terms of your water softeners, as well as your winter salt use. And so that's where a lot of my energy is going right now, is trying to take Saltwise from the Dane County kind of training program and really just expand it out. So one of our focus, to foci, is winter salt. And on the pictures to the left, you see a few individuals that were at a small, it was during COVID, you see a lot of those masks out. We were able to host an equipment workshop so that some of the winter maintenance, both public and private winter maintenance companies and organizations, could see some of the equipment that our early adopters, our leaders in salt reduction, have been using, that have enabled them to make those reductions, like the 50% reductions that Wayne showed us at American Family. So that event was hosted at Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District, and was something that I want to be working to do more of. So continuing that focus on education and training and expanding it out to meet the needs of these professionals that have gone through that first 4-hour introduction, and like what are their needs after that to take those next steps. In the center photo, I'm actually showing off Madison Technical College's staff. They were some of the participants in our trainings in the last couple of years, and the piece of equipment they have out there is a small kind of what I would call a UTV with a rotary broom on it. And so one of the best management practices that can allow us to reduce salt use is using brooms to remove that snow mechanically. And this photo was actually just taken this last weekend. The Madison College staff was able to broom and sweep away snow without using any salt at all. And then just to the right, you can't really see it, but the sidewalks are contracted out. Their maintenance is by another company, and they removed the snow, but weren't able to do as clean of a job. And so they actually did apply salt. So we can see kind of side by side, the same storm, the same place. The incorporation of those best management practices can really enable us to cut or even totally reduce salt use while still maintaining maintain great pavement surfaces and safe conditions. And then to the right, you see a few tweets that are out there. So I kind of see my work as the education, working to support that implementation, and then the celebration, the promotion of what's being done. So the DOT has been a big leader in the state. They've worked to educate the counties that maintain our state highways, and a number of counties have seen reductions from 50 to even 70% reductions in salt use through the education, calibrating equipment, and incorporating best management practices. And then in the bottom right corner, you see an individual in Milwaukee. You can see Lake Michigan there in the background. She was, aware of the need to watch salt use, and she saw a salt spill down at the Oak Leaf Trail in Bayview and swept up that salt and protected what ended up being, based on her calculations, of 80 cups of salt. When we do the math, if 1 teaspoon of salt pollutes 5 gallons of water, 80 cups of salt would pollute 19,000 gallons of water. So that is our fresh water, and for people in the Milwaukee area, that's also their drinking water. So I mentioned just briefly that water softeners are another culprit here. They are delivering a lot of salt in our waste stream to our municipal wastewater treatment plants. And those wastewater treatment plants are not designed and do not have the ability to remove salt from wastewater. So many of us are aware that we have this abundant resource of fresh water in our state, in our aquifers, in our lakes and streams, but maybe we might be taking that a little bit too much for granted. As we put salt into water softeners to pull out unwanted calcium and magnesium ions, we discharge that sodium and chloride to the wastewater treatment plants. They're unable to pull it out. And so all of that salt that goes in your softener is being discharged into our freshwater system. I have on the map there of Wisconsin, the dark colors show us where groundwater is really hard. So where we have the quote-unquote hard minerals of calcium and magnesium. When we have that, people often want to pull those out. So those are areas where people are using water softeners. And then all the orange dots there on that map are wastewater treatment plants that currently have chloride variances. What that means is the DNR restricts the amount of chloride that wastewater treatment plants can put into streams. But the DNR also recognizes that wastewater treatment plants can't really do much to remove the chloride. So if they're getting a lot of chloride from softeners, their hands are kind of tied, actually. The energy that would be required to pull salt and the chloride out of our wastewater would increase the rates of our wastewater treatment plants, the water utilities, by up to 500%. It's just incredibly energetically costly. It would be like running reverse osmosis on all of our wastewater. So while you can potentially, run reverse osmosis at your home on just your kitchen tap, it's not feasible to do that on all of our wastewater. So those wastewater treatment plants who are receiving a lot of salt end up discharging it, and the DNR kind of lets them do it. They get a variance and they're able to discharge that chloride. But what sometimes happens, and why I have a job, is that the wastewater treatment plant needs to put some money into the prevention on the front end. So we're trying to raise awareness that your water softener salt goes into streams. And so that's something that hidden appliance in the basement is something that we want to make a little less hidden. And one way that I worked to do that this fall was to get the sculpture there that's on the right. So that's an old water softener. And a local artist painted a freshwater scene on that water softener. That's a scene of Lake Wingra, actually. And it's out right now. That's not actual rock. That's a polar bear. I think it's the polar bear exhibit, not polar bear, excuse me. What's the exhibit? I don't remember right now. But it's an exhibit at Henry Vilas Zoo. So we have it there at Lake Wingra. It's going to move to Lake Wingra boats this spring, and has some signage to help people recognize that salt in the softeners ends up in our streams. So those are appliances that we really want to dial in and get adjusted, get optimized, so they're using just the amount of salt necessary. So ways that you can be Saltwise around both your winter road salt as well as your softener salt. We have lots of ideas for people on our website. I would encourage you to check it out, wisaltwise.com. You can find applicators that have gone through the City of Madison program. You can get some tips and tricks for reducing salt at home. And you can also, if you see on the next slide, get some ideas for ways that you can get involved to be Saltwise. So I am the only staff person at Saltwise. We have a lot of great partnerships with people like Mike and Phil and Wayne in the community, but we definitely want to get more citizens involved. So taking part in outreach, making sure you're setting a great example at your home or your business. We need people to engage at all levels. So if you're interested at all in volunteering, please check out the website. You can reach out to me at wisaltwise@gmail.com and we can put you to work.
Wonderful. There are so many eye-opening moments in this presentation for me. 80 cups of salt polluting 19,000 gallons of water, and one person making that difference. I'm certainly going to be looking at salt differently and looking at what I can do with my water softener. Thank you so much to all of you for your presentations today, helping us understand this issue better. Are there any final comments you'd like to share with us before we end this session?
I have two quick ones. One is one thing residents in Dane County and throughout the state can do is to hire a certified applicator and then to ask them a few questions, right? Can you track how much salt you use on my property? Can I have a contracted structure so you only pay for level of service so your contractor is not encouraged to apply salt, right? A lot of people get paid by the pound they put down as it's a way to kind of measure the storm. But there's better ways to structure that contract. And then also this idea that there's safe de-icers out there. I had this question come in the other day with the use of one that's the PAW-safe de-icer is made primarily with urea, which is better from a chloride perspective, but it has a pretty limited range of functionality. And that nitrogen that's part of urea does have impacts on our water supplies as well. So there's not really any safe de-icer or completely benign de-icer. There are things that are better. And the best is to mechanically remove all this snow before it turns into ice.
Thank you, Phil. Does anybody else have any wrap-up comments for us? Okay, well, again, this information is so timely. Madison College is happy to participate in getting the word out there. Thank you for the good work that you're doing in keeping our lakes safe and clean. With that, I'll turn you back to the rest of your days.